So Envizia has this really cool animation video function that allows you to create animations of different types that can be really useful for presentations or visualization. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we want to talk about the fact here in the user interface, we can see that there are these 3 drop areas for images, and it uses either 1 or 2 what we call poster frames that establish the beginning and end of an animation. But you can also just use a single frame, and that's what we're going to do first. So let's load a frame of a room that I have. And we're just going to do a really simple sort of like walkthrough of the room, just some motion in the room so that people can kind of see what it looks like. So there it is. So I just simply kind of want to move through the room. So the thing at this point is you just give it a prompt. Move gently through the room so we can see the bookshelf more closely, or something sort of descriptive, and then you generate. Okay, and here we go, and let's take a look at what it's done for us. So it just sort of moves us gently into the room like that. And then it just sort of ends. So this is one of the things about using a single frame is it just sort of arbitrarily chooses what it does, but this can still be very useful. Now let's come back over here and do something else using this single frame approach. What if we, instead of wanting to move through the room, we actually wanted to animate some other aspect of the room? So in this case, I'm going to put a new prompt that says, the blinds over the windows on the left of the room roll up, allowing more beautiful sunlight to enter the room. And then we click generate. And here we go. And then let's see what it's given us. So isn't that pretty awesome? And I loved the interaction with the plant that was apparently touching. That was kind of actually a really nice touch. Let's play that one more time here. Let's go ahead and generate one more thing with this single frame approach right here. And I'm going to change the prompt to transition from day to night lighting. And again, it's going to be using this up here. And then we go ahead and click generate. Okay, and there we go. And let's see what it has done for us here. That's awesome. So these single prompt videos can actually be very useful. But there is one thing that I want to point out. I don't know why this is. When you use this single poster frame approach, video resolution that it generates is a little bit lower than when we use 2 poster frames, and I don't know why that is. It's not egregious, but they will tend to be a little bit smaller. Now, it may be that you want to control the end frame a little bit more closely. So we're going to jump in and take a look at multi-frame setups now, where we have a beginning and an end poster frame that are established over here. So I found an image on a public domain website, that has millions of images of just this simple little white room that I want to use. And we're going to come over and generate a second version of it. So we're going to use chat for this. Let's go ahead and load that up. And we'll open it and tell the chat what we want to do. So this chat is a general purpose function that can be just useful for a lot of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, show me a different view of this room, move in closer to the table and chairs so we are much closer into those, maintain the design of the room otherwise. And I often just will say, let AI decide, and then we let it think about it. And here we go. Now I want to show you something that can happen. The initial generation that it did moved in a little bit, but not as far as I want. So for instance, if I do this compare, you can see that we moved in some, but I'd like it to maybe go in a little bit further. So I had it do a second generation where I just said the view didn't change enough. Can you move in even closer? And then it gave us this. This is a really useful way of using it, is to just have it give you different views, and you may have to prompt a couple of times to get exactly what you write. But now we can use this as a second poster frame. So let's jump back over here to video. Let's go ahead and clear everything. And then we just assign those images. So we can choose a file, or we can just go ahead and populate them. Okay, so there we go. And let's load up the second poster frame. Now, for this one, I actually ended up generating another version of it, so it wasn't quite so close. So let's go ahead, load that. So you can see it's a little bit, it's closer, but it's not quite so heavily close So let's load that as the second poster frame. Okay, so there it is. You can clearly see we've got these two in position, and you can also switch them. You see there's a little switch button right there in case you want to move them. Let's put in the motion, gentle, smooth motion. When you're doing these just simple kind of linear motions between two endpoints, you don't need to be very descriptive, and then you generate. Here we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. And there we go. So beginning to end, we were able to specify exactly the endpoints that we wanted. Now, the cool thing about this is that this was just a photograph of a room. The AI system figured out how to make it dimensional, which is amazing. But let's do something else. What if we not only wanted to just move from point A to point B, but we wanted to change the mood of the room? So what I did was I just went back over to the chat mechanism and I asked it to take the end frame and then convert it into a nighttime image. And then this will become the end frame of our next video. So then we just come over here and we remove the second frame and we will load that up. There we go. So even though we've specified the beginning and the end frame, I usually put something in, change from day to night, and then generate. And there we go. So now when we play it, you'll see that it transitions from this bright daylight over into evening. Isn't that cool? And all from just a photograph. That's really astonishing. So let's take a look at another way that we can use the chat to help develop poster frames for an animation. So let's come over here to chat. We're just going to get dropped into a new chat. So that's good. That's what we want. So let's say that we want to raise the blinds like we had done in the single frame method, but we want to be more specific about it. What I'm going to do is load in a poster frame of that room. So upload to chat. And then we need a second reference image in order to really guide it how we want things to be. So what I've done, I've gone into an image editor and I actually just sketched in on a copy of the image we're using, and I told it very clearly, this is where I want the blinds to be right at about that level. So let's go ahead and load that one up. Okay, so there we go. We've got both of those in there. And then I created a prompt. Attached our two images. One is a reference image for where I want the blinds to be retracted to. The image with the red arrows and the line indicate where I want the blinds to be. Can you retract the blinds using the other image as source to the point indicated? Maintain everything else in the scene as is. And then we enter. Okay, and there we go. So we can take a look at it. So it looks like the perspective shifted a little bit, but it's just going to be an end frame, a poster end frame. This is what we want over here. So that's really good. Okay, so now we can use that for our animation purposes. Okay, so there we go. I've got both of those in. You can see the blinds are down and the blinds are up. And now we just give it a prompt. Raise the blinds so the sun comes streaming in. Very simple. And then we generate. Okay, and there we go. And let's take a look at it. Isn't that amazing? It just raises the blinds up, does exactly what we ask. And it's very specific in this case because we gave it that very specifically generated end frame that we wanted where the levels were. So we're going to do one final animation. I kind of saved the coolest for the last. I have a house, an image that I generated, started with a sketch and went through the whole process, and I've got this house. And I thought it would be interesting if we could see it constructed in place. So then I took this image over into the chat system and I said, hey, can you remove the house but leave everything else the same? And then I told it I also wanted it to become daytime. This is kind of night, like it's at the end of the day, and we're going to be building this house from morning until dusk. So that's kind of the scope of the animation, and the chat system gave me back this. So this is going to be our start frame, and the house is going to be the end frame. Okay, so here we have both of our poster frames in place, and then we just punch in our prompt. generate construction time lapse, showing the framing construction first and then the outside walls going into place. At the very end, the interior lights come on to reveal the interior furnishings. So that is our prompt, and we generate. Okay, and there we go, and this is what it looks like. Isn't that cool? So you could also do some variations on this. Let's say that we wanted to see some construction workers in there. You could do a version of it where you have construction workers running around. And then the final thing I want to do is then just transition to a 3/4 angled view, and we're done. So this gives you kind of a sense of what is possible using the video module.